they announced two charges against Kilmar Abrego Garcia. They also said that he had landed today back in the United States from El Salvador. We, of course, still have Kristen Holmes at the White House, Priscilla Alvarez also here in Washington, Elliot Williams, CNN legal analyst, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General. Priscilla, let me start with you just because this has been something that you've been following so closely. Can you walk us through what we learned here? There was apparently a grand jury impaneled to investigate this indictment. Came down on May 21st, according to the Attorney General. What's next?
Well, this was a traffic stop, in Tennessee that the Department of Homeland Security had released footage of while his court hearing was ongoing. But it was the most that we knew was that he had a brush with law enforcement and the footage of those police. And now, as you heard there from the Attorney General, they had pursued that further. That ended with that grand jury indictment in late May. But I think what's key here, Casey, is the way in which they framed almost the entire set of circumstances here before indictment and after indictment. To remind viewers as to the before here, this was a case that began in March. This was Kilmar Abrego Garcia was on one of the flights that was sent to El Salvador by the Trump administration. He had been accused of being a member of MS-13. However, he had been under withholding of removal, meaning he could not be deported to El Salvador. And it was the first time in this case that the administration had conceded that there was an error, that he accidentally had landed on that flight manifest. And it is what was the center of this very fraught legal battle between the federal judge and the Trump administration, as they have found that the Trump administration was stonewalling the federal judge at almost every turn and digging in their heels by saying he was not going to be returned to the United States. If you also remember, Casey, there was that meeting between President Trump and the Salvadoran president in the Oval Office where this exact issue came up, and both of them maintained at that time that he was not going to be returned, and the Salvadoran president at one point saying that he would essentially have to smuggle him back in. But what we learned here from the Attorney General is that this arrest warrant was presented to El Salvador, and it's changed the circumstances to what now gets us to the after indictment. So the way that they are discussing this now is that if he is prosecuted, he'll go to prison in the United States and then be deported. And he could be deported back to El Salvador because this will likely serve as the basis to remove that withholding of removal, to remove any status that allowed him to stay in the United States before, to then take him back to El Salvador. So clearly there's still going to be questions here as to what this looks like moving forward for him, but still an extraordinary development after weeks, both publicly and in the court, the Trump administration saying he was not going to be returned to the United States.
So, Kristen Holmes, I want to talk about the politics of this in just a second, but Elliot Williams, I just want to have your legal perspective on what the administration is claiming here in terms of bringing him back, because they're essentially saying, well, we didn't follow, they didn't follow the order in terms of facilitating the return before this indictment came down. Now they're saying, well, the indictment changes the circumstances. Is that legally correct?
That is, and it's legally correct and it's practically correct. Number one, notice that El Salvador also had far more incentive to send him back to the United States now that he appears to be charged with a crime. Also, the United States is seemingly welcoming him back because he's been charged with a crime. When someone is charged with anything in the United States and is overseas, the country has an incentive to get that person back. Now, that can only be done with the permission or agreement of a foreign government. Now, sometimes that's in the form of an extradition agreement or some process to extradite the person back. Now, we know that the United States and El Salvador have been in near constant contact about this case and others. And so my suspicion is that we knew the charges were coming, or the government knew that the charges were coming. They got in touch with the folks in El Salvador, said that we are going to charge him with a crime here in the United States. Please send him back. And that process tracks with how other cases would happen. You'd get the person back in the country, try them in the United States, put them in jail in the United States, and then at the end of their sentence, then remove them to whichever country they would naturally go back to.
All right, let's bring in CNN senior justice correspondent Evan Perez has made his way to a camera. He was in that news conference at the Justice Department. And Evan, you asked the Attorney General directly what's changed over the past few months. Can you explain?
Yeah, look, I mean, we knew that this traffic stop where we've seen the video now of Tennessee state troopers who had stopped him and had questioned him, and there was a chance there for the Homeland Security Department to detain him. Again, the allegation that he was a member of MS-13, that was already known in the system, in the databases. And then, of course, in the last few months, they've been resisting, saying that they were never going to bring him back. So I asked, what changed? And the answer from the Attorney General is that there were new facts that have emerged as part of this investigation. Now, we knew, Casey, that there was an investigation, the first inkling of this just in the last few weeks when we requested some of this information from Tennessee, and the local authorities said that there was an ongoing investigation, which we verified was actually happening in the Middle District of Tennessee. This is in Nashville. And so that's where this investigation has lived. And so the question, obviously, that will have to be litigated as part of this case is whether these new facts emerge because there was sort of political pressure to bring this case as a way to resolve this situation. It's always been the case, though, that the Bukele government in El Salvador, if Donald Trump called President Bukele and asked him to send him back, almost certainly he would have, right? They have that kind of relationship. But the U.S. government just did not want him to come back. And presenting this case and presenting these charges and connecting him to some very serious allegations is the best way, obviously politically, for this to be resolved. And so we'll see how these charges hold up in court and all of the attending other things that the Attorney General mentioned, which he's not directly charged in, but what they're saying is that he's connected to a group that was involved in all these other cases. That all of that will be fought out in court when this case goes to trial.
So, Kristen Holmes, that kind of lays out the political questions fairly well. I mean, clearly the Trump administration did not want to be seen caving on this. Bringing these charges has provided them with legal cover to have him back in the United States. This happened on May 21st, the indictment. Of course, now we know he's back here as of today. Presumably that's why they're doing it in public. But it is, a Friday afternoon in the summer. The president has left the White House. He didn't say anything about this on his way out. What do you take away from all of this?
Well, I really think Evan hit the nail on the head there. I mean, talking about how they could do this and bring him back without relenting, without giving up the argument that they have continued to make, this is how they ended up doing that. Now, of course, we're going to see how these charges play in court. I mean, one of the things that we've heard from Donald Trump time and time again, in addition to the fact that he said that Garcia would never come back into the United States, we've heard from him and his allies that they painted him as a criminal. They have said that he is engaged in criminal activity, that the U.S. didn't want him back. Now, of course, they are saying we have the evidence to back it up. And you talk about that indictment dropping on May 21st. I think we should also note that Pam Bondi was asked when this investigation started, and she did not answer that. She said it was been an ongoing investigation. So, of course, there are going to be questions here about if this was brought because of the political pressure that was put on the Department of Justice and really on the administration and Donald Trump as a whole, as they have tried to kind of walk this line, particularly when it comes to the courts, where they say that they value the Supreme Court, that they will always listen to the Supreme Court. Well, the Supreme Court said that they should facilitate the return of Garcia to the United States. They were parsing those words over and over again, trying to say facilitate. Of course, we're trying to facilitate. But as Evan said, Donald Trump has a relationship with Bukele. He could have called and had told him it was imperative that he bring Garcia home, and he did not do that. Now, Garcia will be back in the United States, and theoretically they helped facilitate that. But of course, they have these criminal charges here. It also goes to the narrative that they have been repeating and doubling down on, that Garcia is a criminal and that he had charges against him and that there were things in his past that they had not made public yet. Now, of course, we're seeing this, and the big question is, do these hold up in court? And we'll have to watch how this plays out.
All right, Kristen Holmes, Evan Perez, Priscilla Alvarez, Elliot Williams, thank you all for jumping on this story. And our panel is here now to discuss further. CNN political analyst, White House correspondent for the New York Times, Zolan Cano-Youngs, Chuck Todd, host of the Chuck Todd Cast, CNN political commentators Xochitl Hinojosa and Brad Todd both join us as well. Thank you all for being here. It's wonderful to have you. Xochitl, actually, let me start with you because you were a longtime spokesperson for the Department of Justice, and our reporters have raised questions about why this case came to be in the manner that it did. How do you look at it?
Well, I also have these questions, and mainly because charges like this would come out of the U.S. Attorney's Office, and it'd be part of an investigation run by career professionals. Their recommendation would come up to the Deputy Attorney General's office, and the Attorney General would be briefed. Here, to me, what I don't understand is whether or not these charges came about because there was a demand and there was an order from a judge to bring him back, and the Justice Department had to scramble. So did the charges come about because political leadership said that they needed to bring an indictment and said that this needed to happen, or did it come from career professionals in the normal course of doing business at the Justice Department? We've seen over the last few months a number of career professionals have resigned because the Justice Department has pressured career officials to bring charges they didn't want to bring. We saw that in the Eric Adams case. We've seen it in a few other instances. And so you've had mass exodus at the Justice Department. So I think what will be interesting to see is who signed off on it. Were there career attorneys in the Middle District of Tennessee that signed off on these charges? Or was this a political decision from Pam Bondi because Donald Trump ordered her to?